What's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. I am here with a special guest, my very own lovely cousin, Being Scared. Being Scared, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing so good, man. How are you?
I am doing great because just the other day, you called me up and you said, "You know what, bro?" And I said, "What's up, bro?" And you said, "We got to do a movie, a specific movie that's so good, it's going to knock your socks off." And I said, "What movie is that going to be?" And you said, "Mr. Brooks." And I said, "God dang it, yes, we are doing that. How did you know that that's the perfect movie to do?" Because it's amazing. And I can't wait to talk about this movie. This is something that I have loved since I was basically fresh out of high school. Was the first time I saw it, and I just was
Yeah.
blown away the very first time I saw this movie. And with the minute you said you wanted to do it, I knew that there was like no better movie to do than this one at this very moment. So, how are you doing? Why did you want to do Mr. Brooks? Don't give anything away. Remember, it's always going to be
Right.
spoiler free in the beginning. So, why did you want to do Mr. Brooks?
Well, I remember back in the day when the movie came out, or shortly after it came out, I saw it, and I remember you asking me if I saw it, and I told you that I did, and you told me that you loved it, and I was like, I love it too. And I even remember we actually watched it together once at your old apartment a long time ago. Um, and it's just such a good movie. And I know that we both really liked it. And we used to do a podcast together, Movie Men. And I don't know why this movie never came to mind for us to do this movie when we both really enjoyed it, you know? So I was thinking about the movie the other day and how much I liked it and how much I would enjoy watching it again, even though I've seen it like 5 times. And I was thinking, I know Greg loves this movie too. We should do a podcast on this.
I think that was a perfect suggestion because this movie is just freaking mwah. So let's get into it. Okay. So the movie we're doing is Mr. Brooks. This movie came out back in 27. I said that way weird. This movie came this movie came out in 2007. Again, this is going to be spoiler free for anyone who hasn't seen this. And trust me, I swear to God, trust me. This is one movie you do not want the ending spoiled to if you have not seen this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. So let's get
If
into some
you Can I just throw this out here?
Mhm.
I know that some people will watch like podcasts or not watch, but listen to podcasts and movie reviews and stuff, and they will just kind of deal with getting the ending spoiled, even though they haven't seen it, just because they enjoy the podcaster. Like if you just enjoy Greg's podcasts right now, if you're just listening to this because you enjoy his podcast, but you have not seen Mr. Brooks, you need to stop this and see that movie before you finish this podcast. You need to do that. You cannot have this movie ruined for you, the ending. So just wanted to throw that out.
I couldn't agree with you more. Seriously, this is just one of those like jaw-dropping, eyes wide open endings,
Yeah.
and you're like, dude. And then
Yeah.
not only that, there's also another ending that shocks your freaking mind, which we'll definitely talk about in spoilers. But as of right now, you don't want that spoiled. So let's get
Yep.
into the ratings, okay? So Mr. Brooks, on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie was rated at 55%. What the heck?
Dude. What? Ooh, oh my gosh, that's criminal, man. It's such a good movie. That
It's
is ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous because literally, not exaggerating, every person I've ever talked to about this movie was like hands down brilliant movie. So
Yeah.
so 55%, that just blows my mind. But the IMDb score is 7.3 out of 10. That's actually one of the higher scores that we've done out of these most recent podcasts.
Yeah. You know what, I I'm a fan of reading and listening to reviews for movies before I go see them, obviously without spoilers. And I never go to Rotten Tomatoes ever. I always go to IMDb. I When I'm thinking about the score of a movie, I think IMDb, not Rotten Tomatoes, because Rotten Tomatoes is just not their scale is their meter is messed up, man. In my opinion, I just don't agree with it. Like IMDb 7.3, uh, I think that's a fair score, just taking into account thousands of people that have reviewed it. But 5.5, that's not accurate. This movie is way better than that. You know,
You mean 55?
55. Yes, sorry. That's just not accurate for this movie.
It's really not. And dude, a long time ago, I used to I used to really go by Rotten Tomatoes scores. And then I think the last time I really trusted what Rotten Tomatoes said was when in 2016, when the movie Arrival came out. You and I actually saw that together with our wives. And I remember you and I effing hated that movie.
That movie sucked, man.
It sucked so bad. And that got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I remember that day. I remember working like a 10-hour work shift that day with my brother at the time, getting into a huge argument with him on the way home because he wasn't, because I don't want to get too off track here, but because we worked longer that day. We did overtime and we didn't need to. And I was trying to tell him that I had plans to go see this movie with you that day. Dude, it worked my butt off doing construction for 10 hours that day. Super tired, went home, got ready, took a shower, got my wife, and we met you guys at the theater. And the movie was so boring. I was struggling to keep my eyes open, dude. It was so boring, man. That movie sucks. I'm sorry. I don't like it.
All of us, while watching the movie, were like bobbing our heads up and down from falling asleep and like trying to stay awake. It was
Yeah.
it was dreadful. I mean, I've a lot of people have said it's amazing. Just for me,
Yeah.
I hated that movie.
Yeah.
So pretty much to wrap that story up, that was the last time I really trusted what Rotten Tomatoes had to say. And that was not just Rotten Tomatoes that I stopped listening to. It honestly turned into all critics. I just stopped listening to critics because
Critics, man.
everybody has their own taste and their own flavor. And for some people, like the movie The Shining, some people love The Shining and swear that it's the best movie that's ever been made. And for me, I'm like, that movie was a snooze fest. It's boring. Some of it doesn't even make sense. I don't even like it. And the ending's horrible, in my opinion. There's only a few good moments. So that's two huge different opinions. And if somebody were to listen to just me, they might skip that movie that they would find a masterpiece. And so that's why I try not to listen to anybody anymore, which is kind of hypocritical because I'm asking you guys to listen to what I have to say about a movie. But still, like,
Yeah.
everybody has their own flavor. And so I just try to give movies a shot and just see what I think
Yeah.
about it.
Well, what you just said is so true, and you can't, in my opinion, you can't really, if you're reading a review or listening to a podcast or a review for a movie and then deciding to not see it based on that, I think that that's not a good thing to do. And because I have been proven wrong. I've read reviews on IMDb for movies, and they didn't get that good of reviews. And then I went to see the movie, and I loved it. You know, and so what you just said is so true. It's just everybody's got their own taste, and there could be just the slightest thing about a movie that makes it for you, that nobody else cared about that little aspect, but you did. And so you really liked it just for that. And a great example that you just gave was The Shining. I love that movie. And so I think that would be a great movie to do a podcast on in the future. And that way we can kind of go back and forth on this. You know what I mean? I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah. Just for instance, this is episode 18. Episode 16 I just did with my friend Mike, we did The Witch. And that was one movie that he gave basically almost a perfect 10 score to. And I gave it a 4 because I was like,
Yeah.
this movie was garbage. And I don't want to get too much into The Witch when we're here to do Mr. Brooks, but that's just two people's very different opinions about one movie. And
Yeah.
so guys, go out there, see these movies, and have your own opinions. And
Yes.
get back to me and give me your opinions. I'd love to hear it for all these movies that we do now and into the future. All right, so Mr. Brooks had a $20 million budget. It was directed by Bruce A. Evans. So I looked up what he had some experience work in, and the only other movie that he directed besides Mr. Brooks is a movie called Cuffs from 1992. Never even heard of that movie at all. So it's very not important. But then I started doing some other research on this Bruce Evans guy, and he is the writer. He wrote the screenplay, and he's the producer of the movie Stand By Me from 1986.
Whoa. Really? He wrote the screenplay?
Yeah, and he produced Stand By Me.
Wow, dude. Why is this guy so under the radar, man? That movie is classic.
I think sometimes you just hit the nail on the head the very first time, and then After that, you're just swinging that hammer and you never hit that nail again. Maybe one time, and then you get Mr. Brooks, and then you don't hit it again.
Dude, so true, man. That's weird though. What a weird experience. Like, dude, that's weird because that I love Stand By Me and I definitely love Mr. Brooks and I've never heard of Cuffs. So that's just like, what the hell has he been doing? Has he just been like mainly producing?
Um, I don't know. Maybe I didn't look that deep into him. I
Okay.
what I do when I get my research for these podcasts, I like to see what they've directed and if they have any writing credits in anything else that's very popular. I like to write that down too because you know I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I think I was talking to you about it on the phone actually the other day, where I'm starting to notice directors more and starting to say, "Oh, this director directed this movie, and they also directed this movie, and I like both of those movies." So I'm starting to think I like this director. So whenever I hear his name, I'm instantly going to be like, "Oh, I want to go see that movie because I like his other work the other work that he's done." Like you and I have done films now. You've done Woodsboro and She's at the Door. So if people liked both of those movies, the next time Being Scared puts out a movie, they're probably going to instantly have a positive outlook towards it before they even see it because they like the
Right.
previous work. Same thing for
Yep.
mine. You know what I mean? And so I like that. So I'm Bruce Evans. Never heard of him before, and now I know that he's done two very very awesome movies. So good for
Yeah.
that guy. Good for
Mhm.
you, Bruce. Bruce Almighty and Evan Almighty. I just realized that as I did this.
Nice, dude. I like it.
All right, so the plot of Mr. Brooks. A well respected businessman is sometimes controlled by his murder and mayhem loving alter ego. Okay, so there's a character in this movie that we'll get into in a little while, but he basically plays Mr. Brooks's, well, from what it says right here, alter ego. I would say more so it's his conscience. It's like
Yep.
him talking to himself.
100%, dude. That I was thinking the same thing right when you said it.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like in order to have an alter ego, it kind of sounds like he's like a schizophrenic and he's got like split personalities and stuff, which he doesn't have. It's just when you're watching the movie, he has a conversation with this certain character, and this character will like kind of basically say out loud what he probably is thinking on the inside. So if Mr.
Right.
Brooks is like, I don't want to do this, then his alter ego or his conscience will be in the backseat of his car or something saying, yes, you do. You do want to do this. And he's like
Yes.
egging him on. So it's basically instead of having to just wonder what Mr. Brooks is thinking, but then also not having it look very cliche and corny by having him say out loud what he's thinking. They very creatively decided to throw this extra character in to be his inner monologue. And God, dude, what a
Yes.
great effing choice that was.
Yes. I completely agree. And not only that, something that's kind of funny about this situation is that actor. Do you have his name written down? I didn't look it up.
I do, and we're going to talk about the stars here in just a second after you finish
Okay,
your
but well, can you tell me what his name is real quick?
the actor or the character.
The actor.
William Hurt, who plays Marshall.
Yes. That actor. I have seen him in several movies before, and he has never been an actor that I really enjoyed, except for in this movie. There's just some way that he played that character that was so good. But I don't want to jump ahead. I know that you've got this kind of scheduled. So,
Yeah. All right. So the stars of this movie, it goes Kevin Costner, who plays Earl Brooks, Demi Moore, who plays Detective Tracy Atwood, Dane Cook, who plays Mr. Smith, William Hurt, who plays Marshall, the alter ego. Uh, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. It's either Marge or Marg. I'm not sure. It's Marg. Marg
hmm.
Helgenberger. What a name. Marge or Marg Heldenberger, who plays Emma Brooks, Mr. Brooks' wife, and then Danielle Panabaker, who plays Jane Brooks, his daughter.
Right.
Okay, so before we get into what we liked or didn't like about this movie, again, spoiler free, I want to know what your rating out of 10 is. 1 means that it sucks and this is the worst thing you've ever seen pretty much. 5 means it's a completely average, right down the middle type of movie. And 10 means this is one of the best movies you've ever seen. What's your score, my friend?
You know, it's either an 8 or a 7.5. And I'm leaning more towards an 8 just because I really enjoy it. So I'm gonna go with an 8. I really like it. I really do. It's
And
it's it's a movie that I will want to watch repeatedly for the rest of my life. I mean, not every day or anything like that, but when enough time passes, there's I actually remember it and I'm like, I need to watch Mr. Brooks again because it's so unique. I've never seen a movie that's anything like this before ever. And I love that about it, you know? So what is your score?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And I know from previous episodes that you and I have done together that an 8 is a really high score in your book. That's not something that you just give to all these movies. That's got to be a really good movie for you. For me, I'm a little more generous, I guess you would say. So I feel like I'm the kind of guy that's like, when I really like something, I really like something, and when I hate something, I really hate something. And so
Yeah, you got the
yeah,
passion, man. You got that passion.
yeah. And so for me, I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. 9 out of
Okay.
10. I'm not going to be extreme and say 10 out of 10, bro, because it's not. There are things I have issues with in this, and we'll dive deep into those. But as of now, a 9 out of 10 because there's two side stories going on at the same time. One is Mr. Brooks's story, and the other one is Detective Tracy Atwood's side story. And there's parts of that story that I like, and there's also parts that I despise of that story. And for me, as much as I hate her side story, it doesn't take away as much as I absolutely love Mr. Brooks's story. So much that it outweighs the crappy stuff of Tracy Atwood. But again, a 9 out of 10, I'm going to say it's well acted. The screenplay is super original, which is funny because you just said that you've never seen a movie like this, and I haven't either. Also, this movie gives me like an uneasy feeling throughout the entire thing. So like there's certain car rides where they're looking for somebody to kill. There's certain parts where there's confrontation. There's certain parts where the cop is asking certain characters where they were and what they do and stuff like that. And there's just this uneasy feeling of like, oh my God, is somebody gonna get caught? And when are they gonna get caught? What's gonna happen next? This movie just
Yeah.
jumps around, and God, I love it. And it's also a very well thought out movie. The dialogue is clever. The way he kills people is clever. The standards that he has in order to pick who he kills is clever. The ending is clever. The ending after that is clever. This movie is just very thought out, and you can tell that they took their time. They didn't rush this movie when they made it. They really thought of like all these really specific things, and I think it reflects. I think it shows in this movie.
I agree. And, just to kind of go off of what you were just saying, the part about this, if the whole side story with the police officer or the detective or whatever she is, that's the part of the movie that I don't like. There's not any part of that storyline that I like. Whenever it shows her, I'm just waiting for it to show Mr. Brooks again. And I really think that the movie would be a 9 or maybe even a 10 if it just was filled with Kevin Costner, Mr. Brooks, what he's doing. And, I understand that they wanted to throw in that detective part of it that's like trying to figure out who's doing these bad things and that and that's fine. But you don't need to devote an entire character, like a huge character, to that, because when you've got a character like Mr. Brooks that is so interesting and intriguing and so amazingly well acted by Kevin Costner, you don't care about anybody else in the movie. And whenever they're showing someone else, you're like, no, I just want Mr. Brooks. That's why I'm watching this movie. I don't care about this detective. Now, I understand that some people might disagree with that, and maybe for them it added to the story, but for me it didn't. I just think that her part was completely unnecessary. I didn't care about her backstory, and I just didn't care about it. I just wanted Mr. Brooks because he was so interesting. But
It reminds me of when you're watching a really, really solid TV show and they're showing like all the stuff that you just absolutely love. And then they have like one whole episode devoted to one character that you don't really care about, but they have
right.
to show some part of this character. And you're like, okay, I can see how this can add to the story, but like, can we just get back to the people we want to see, please? And
Yes.
honestly, dude, I couldn't agree more. Like, I do completely think that this movie could have been still a 10 out of 10 with her out of the picture. I
Yes.
just because the parts that she's in, sometimes they're like really bad, dude. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
and it totally brings it from like a super well thought out serious story to like a super cringy Law and Order episode.
Exactly. And no offense at all against Demi Moore, who plays the detective that we're talking about. I don't think she's a bad actress by any means. That is not what I'm saying. I am not talking. Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't think her acting in this movie is that memorable, and it's just I think she was miscast. I think that there's, in my opinion, for me, there's multiple problems to her part in this movie. I think she was miscast. I think it should have been a different person playing this role, a different actress. And not only that, I don't think her character was even necessary at all. You know, I
It
just, yeah.
it wasn't necessary, but there were some moments though that she gave that were good, which we'll talk about later on. But without getting into spoilers, like, what did you think of Kevin Costner's performance?
Oh, dude. He makes the movie. And I can't even imagine another actor doing what he did in making this movie. Sometimes you see a movie like this one with Kevin Costner and you think, like, I can't imagine somebody else doing it. It had to be him. It was fate. It was meant to be. It had to be Kevin Costner. And if you're a Kevin Costner fan and you have not seen this movie, oh my God, go see this movie. Do not listen to the rest of this podcast because we are going to do spoilers. And he killed it. I do not need to even think about this. His acting in this movie, the way that he portrayed this character, 10 out of 10. So good, dude.
If you if you could burst out of that 10 out of 10 and give him like a 12 out of 10, I would.
Yeah.
I totally would. And it's just the way his first of all, his mannerisms when he's talking, when he's acting, his body language, but more so, dude, even his just the way he speaks, he kind of has this like, okay, Mr. Smith, so you're gonna meet me
Yeah.
at 8 o'clock on this corner, and I'm gonna pick you up. Don't be stupid. I could kill
Yes.
you, and like it's just the way he talks. It's just like he's so calm. But then you'll even have moments where he's like completely losing his crap. But on, you know what I mean? And like he's crying and he's freaking out about certain events that happen. And it's just like, oh my God, like this guy's performance is freaking sweet.
Yeah, phenomenal, dude. He just he portrays his character to be calm and collected and just overwhelmingly intelligent to where he's it's not possible to beat this guy. It's just not possible. He is 10 steps ahead of where you're at. He's just, but he's not arrogant. That's just who he is. And the way that he portrays that character, I don't get a sense of him being like arrogant, like he knows he's going to win. He's just so smart. He just knows exactly what's going on. Even though I'm not going to say that he's perfect, there's points in this movie where he makes a mistake or two, and it's so interesting the way that he does make a mistake, but then somehow takes care of it. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I think it's about time we're going to have to wrap up the non-spoiler section of this
Yeah.
because this movie is
Yeah.
too effing good to keep contained. So I'm going to give you guys a 5-minute warning or 5-second. We're not sitting here for 5 minutes. I'll give you a 5-second warning to turn this off. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Spoiler time. So I always like to start off my spoiler section by asking my guest, what is your favorite, or who is your favorite, and who is your least favorite character of this movie? So give me your favorite.
Well, my favorite character is the detective. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, my favorite character is Kevin Costner. It could never be somebody else. The only person that even comes close is William Hurt. I think you said his name was. He does his character just perfectly. 10 out of 10 performance. But yeah, dude, Kevin Costner's untouchable in this movie. Just nobody can come close. He's my favorite, hands down.
Who's your least favorite?
My least favorite. So, unfortunately, I'm sorry. I really don't have anything against Demi Moore. I really don't. I liked her in every other movie I've ever seen her in, especially that movie Ghost with Patrick.
Hmm.
She was absolutely brilliant in that movie. I have nothing against her at all. As a matter of fact, I think she's smoking hot too. But in this movie, she just didn't fit. It just her acting and her character and her casting, whoever casted her, I just think they made a mistake. I just don't think she was the right one. And the way she portrayed her character and her character alone was just my least favorite, hands down. And I'm even thinking of all the other supporting actors that don't even have as big of a role as she does. I don't have a problem with what any of them did. The only character that really annoys me, and while I'm watching this person, I'm thinking, can we just get back to Mr. Brooks? Is when she's on the screen.
Absolutely. I totally agree, dude. And like, I, I don't think she was miscast. I just think that she just didn't act the way she needed to. I think she took it way more comical, and like, and what I mean by that is like, there's lots of moments where she has these little one-liners where she's trying to be like the cool cop, and she's got like she's chewing on her gum and she's just smacking it with her mouth open because that's what the cool cop with the aviators does. You know,
Yeah.
there's even the scene where she's sitting at the table with her lawyer, her ex-husband's lawyer, and the ex-husband is demanding a lot of money from her because she's really wealthy. She got a lot of inheritance from her
And
father.
her like get hit by the bus line.
Yeah, she goes, you know what would really make me happy is if you got hit by a bus, or she goes, if you got hit by a train or a truck. She goes, if you got hit by a truck and died.
Yeah.
Like I do like that line, and I think it was funny, and the way she delivered it was pretty cool, I guess. But it's that kind of thing where she's like she has to be so hardcore, and then like there's a moment when the ex-husband is requesting a picture that she still has property of, and she's like, hey, about that picture, and then she slams it on the ground, and she's like, tell him I
Couldn't,
lost it or something. Yeah.
yeah. Just super, yeah. I could not agree more with that. However, I do agree with what you just said regarding the picture. I did not like that line. I thought that was cliche and lazy writing, which is no fault of hers. However, it is possible that if maybe a different actor did that, maybe it would have worked better. I just did not like her in this film. I don't think she fit. And I need to disagree with you with the part when she said, "If you got hit by a truck and died," I thought that was lame. I thought that was lazy writing. I thought that was a stupid line, and it was just it made me not take her seriously. It's just like, okay, so I don't think for a moment that this woman is going to be the one that catches the unbelievably, infinitely brilliant Mr. Brooks. I just like, I think it would have been better to try to show that the person that's going after Mr. Brooks is intelligent. And by her saying something so stupid with two lawyers present, it's like, okay, you know what I mean?
And
Just that's just my opinion on it. But
they even make a comment too. They're like, really, Tracy? Like,
yeah,
you died? Thank you, like, for screwing yourself. And she's like, yeah, but it felt good. And it's like, oh
yeah,
my God.
I know.
Yeah, dude, stupid one-liners like that. Like, you know, in the writer's room, they're like, oh, how cool would it be if, you know, she said something like that? Oh, yeah. You know, and it's like, no, guys, like, people aren't going to respond well to that. All right, so let me get into my favorite, least favorite character. So my favorite is also Mr. Brooks, straight up. He is the bombest of this whole movie. But it was a really close tie between him and Marshall, his alter ego or his conscience.
Yeah,
That guy's William Hurt, dude. His performance was just so good. And honestly, I don't really recognize him from anything else, so I don't have anything to compare him to. But
yeah,
just his performance, like especially, I love what this one part. It's right after Mr. Brooks kills like the naked dancing couple in the beginning of the movie, and he like walks forwards towards the dead bodies, and some light appears on Mr. Brooks's face, and uh, Marshall he just like stops him and he goes, "Wait a minute," and he like pulls him back and he goes, what the fuck is this? Right. And
yeah,
he's like, you're getting sloppy, you know, like you should have known this. You made a mistake. You left the blinds open, you know, and like it's just like I said earlier, like having his character be in the movie to be like Mr. Brooks's inner monologue is just
yeah.
so brilliant. And
It was. It was, and it was. You know, it's. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just got to say this before I forget this point. It's such a weird feeling watching this movie and disliking that detective storyline so much, And then when they switch back to Mr. Brooks and his alter ego, Marshall, loving them together and their chemistry so much, and the way they play off each other and their dialogue is perfect. There's not a single part of it that I would change if I could. You know, it's just weird. Uh,
Bro, this movie came out 13 years ago. I, for the life of me, cannot understand why they haven't made a Mr. Brooks 2.
oh, dude, you know, I thought that this would come up, and I thought that you might know this information, but this was meant to be a trilogy. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it was. And I'm positive of that. If you go onto IMDb and read the trivia, unless somebody went on there and straight up lied, I read this on there. It was meant to be a trilogy of 3 movies, and something fell through to where it didn't happen. I do not remember what that thing was, but I do remember being shocked to read that it was supposed to be more than 1 movie. And I was just really bummed out when I learned that, because I could not agree more. This movie needs a sequel so badly, especially with the very end, which I don't want to jump to just yet. But with that ending, how could there not have been a sequel to this movie, man?
Oh, I know. It's totally set up to have a sequel. So, I mean, I guess obviously they were going to have a sequel, and not just that, but a trilogy. Just
Yeah.
whatever happened, and I don't know why. And that's unfortunate, because this movie is just, it should have a sequel, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they would have a sequel, and it would ruin the legacy of the first one. So I don't know. All right. So my least favorite character. This was this was so hard for me to pick this character, because there are 2 characters in this movie that I absolutely cannot stand. Um, and out of the 2, this is the one I wrote down. So I'm just gonna have to say this is the one I hate the most. Jesse, who plays the Detective Atwood's ex-husband. I think I hate
Okay.
his character the most, because he is so attractive that he just seems like a super attractive dick of an ex-husband.
It's just, I know what you mean by that. It's just kind of over the top. Like they picked a guy that looks like a Ken doll. You know what I mean? To where it's just kind of like, you don't, it's just, I know what you mean. I can't really put it into words, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it's like unrealistic, dude. It's like, it's honestly like having Megan Fox like in the Transformers movie. It's like
Yeah.
she's so hot that it's like, come on, like this this is such an actress or an actor that, like, you're taking me out of the movie by your attractiveness.
Yeah. I agree. However, I loved that movie, especially back in the day when it came out. When the first Transformers movie came out, dude, I was on board. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved Megan Fox.
Yeah, dude, she's a
But
fox.
yeah, dude. But watching it now and keeping it real and listening to what you're saying, I totally agree, and I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just sometimes like these people are just a little too hot to be taken seriously as actors, in my opinion.
Right.
And that's what that guy was to me. He was just too like that dude was too fine. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, and I also know that you're married and you have a wife and that you're straight. So, ideas there, fellas.
Yeah, but it was either a tie between Jesse or the killer. I can't remember his name. I didn't write it down. I think it was like Mux or Mix or something like that. But basically, like, there's this killer in the movie, and that's part of Atwood's side story, is that she locked this guy up because he was like
Mm,
a hanging kind of guy. They called him like
the hangman killer.
the hangman, because he would kill his victims and then hang them in public places. And I guess he swore that if he ever got caught or whatever, that he or got out of prison, escaped, he was going to kill Detective Atwood. So that's a whole side story about her getting attacked by this guy, and then they're in a high speed chase, and then she like gets flung out of the van that she was kidnapped in, and then she has to get stitches on her head, and then there's a whole ending scene with a shootout. And that's right there is like the huge side story that you and I are talking about, that just so cringy. It's like, why did you have to add this? You just took this movie from such a brilliant masterpiece to, like I said, like in a Law and Order episode. That's what it truly
Yep.
felt like. And
That's dude. It's exactly what it is.
yeah, and it's such a shame that they had to throw that in. It's like, did you guys not have enough confidence that just the Mr. Brooks stuff was good enough? Because it was.
Yeah. Honestly, I could not agree more. You know, that whole what's really funny about this movie is I'll still give it an 8 out of 10 simply because of Kevin Costner and William Hurt and their characters, and it's just so good, you know. And you know, something that we've not even touched on yet is Dane Cook. We need to start talking about him.
Oh,
But I just to get to my last comment on the detective that I want to make is, what does she really do for the movie? Did she ever even really come close to figuring out? I mean, she didn't even do her point in the movie is to be the person that's trying to figure out who Mr. Brooks is, you know, and they're too wrapped up in her other storyline where this other guy's going to get out of prison and try to kill her. It's like nobody cares about that. How could you possibly think that that's more entertaining? Like them pick like grabbing her into a van and it's like, get back to Mr. Brooks. Like, what making us watch right now? What does this have to do with her finding Mr. Brooks? You know what I mean? It just, yeah, I don't know.
No, I totally know what you mean, and I guess we should just call this the Hate Detective Atwood podcast because can't stand her. But truthfully, though, her character and her side story was pathetic. And you totally made a good point. You're like, what did she really do? And she didn't really do anything except kind of give you a little bit of background on Mr. Brooks and his previous killings because he is known as the thumbprint killer. And so you kind of learn that because of her, and you learn how precise and articulate, or not articulate, but how precise and
meticulous.
That's what I'm looking for. Meticulous or whatever. How he is about his cleanup and everything, and how he kills the person, and how when he kills people he positions them and he takes pictures, and like she gives you the backstory. So I guess she's good for that. But other than that, she doesn't even come close to catching the guy. Like not even. The only person she comes close to catching is Dane Cook's character.
Yeah.
But at the end
of even do that.
She doesn't even do that.
He's not even a character that needs catching.
I know. She was a waste of time, and she's wasting this podcast.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I had to write down one specific thing that instantly made this movie amazing. And I guess in a way, I'm a sucker for movies that start off with like a phrase or a saying or some sort of writing on the screen. You know, like if you watch Cloverfield or if you watch Paranormal Activity or The Blair Witch Project, all 3 found footage movies, all the beginning of those movies are like, back in this day, there was a camera that was found at the crime scene. You know what I mean? And like it gets you like into the movie by reading that. And you're like, oh, snap. Okay, what am I getting myself into? It prepares you for the movie you're about to see. Excuse me. This movie definitely had one of those, and I wrote it down word for word. It starts off with some like deep, bassy, ominous kind of music. And then this is what pops up on the screen. It says, "The hunger has returned to Mr. Brooks's head. It never really left." And that's how the movie starts. And then it starts off without showing him yet, him praying, like, "My Father, please forgive me for what I've done." Like, and he's praying to God because, and you're like, what's happening? But you can tell that in his mind, he's fighting this battle because he wants to kill again. But he's swore to himself, he put it behind him, and he had been clean for like 2 years. But it's like his conscience, his Marshall is like egging him on. He's like, you want to kill these people and stuff. And he's like, "I put that behind me, Marshall." And he goes, "Yeah, right. You want to do this, you know?" And it just, that's how it starts. And it's so cool. What do you think about that opening?
Dude, beyond brilliant, dude. Like I could not agree more. It just totally grabs your attention. There's no way you could be bored. There's no way you could think that beginning is boring. And when it's funny, the relationship between Marshall and Mr. Brooks, because Marshall's kind of being an asshole to him, but yet they're like best friends. You know what I mean? It's like Mr. Brooks is saying like, I'm not doing that anymore. And Marshall's like, "Yeah, okay." And Mr. Brooks doesn't really get too mad at him because it's like a part of him. It's like it's his best friend in a way, you know? And his best friend knows what he's really all about. And he's like, "Come on, dude. Like, you want this. I want this." And dude, honestly, I don't think we even have enough time tonight. I'm not saying that I need to get off anytime soon, but it's going to take a lot for me to really get into this movie, man. I'll, as long as you're willing to stay up tonight, let's get deep into it, man, because this movie is that good, man. Like,
Worth that conversation. I totally understand.
yeah,
And the moment you talked about, you're just a little bit wrong because I literally came off of watching this movie like 30 minutes before we started this. So like
yeah,
it's so fresh in my mind right now. And the part you're talking about is when Kevin Costner, Mr. Brooks, is driving because he's going to go commit those murders. And he's driving and he's like, "This is the last time, Marshall. I swear to God, like, this is the last time. I'm not doing this again." Marshall doesn't even say anything. He kind of looks at him and then he starts to kind of like look away out of the window and he goes,
yeah.
like, and he
He just
starts laughing.
laughs.
Yeah, because he's like, "Yeah, right. You are not
Yeah,
done. And you know you're not done." It's basically like the best way I can explain it, non movie related, is like, say you're trying to go on a diet and you're trying to eat better. You're not trying to eat bad. And outside, you're saying out loud, I'm not going to eat bad anymore. I'm just going to eat good. And then you get in that kitchen late at night, right? And maybe you got the munchies. Maybe you're like just tired and you want that sugar or something, whatever it is. And you're standing there and you're looking at that like Hostess cupcake pile or that Twinkie pile that you got in that cabinet, and you open that cabinet and outside you're like, "No, I'm not going to eat that Twinkie." But on the inside you're like, "But I want it so bad." And it's going to
yeah,
be so good once I eat it, but I'm not going to have it again after that one Twinkie. That's
yeah.
that inner monologue that you have to yourself is what's represented in Marshall's character. And that's why
Exactly.
Kevin
Yes.
Costner, Mr. Brooks, is saying, "Last time, Marshall, I swear to God, it's my last time. I'm not doing this again." And he goes, "I know you. You're doing this again.
Yeah.
I know you will."
It's so funny that you say that. I mean, don't you think that people, when they're trying not to indulge in something or do something that they know they're not supposed to do, like eat something they're not supposed to, or drink something they're not supposed to, or anything like that, there's a part of you that's always standing on the outside, like, I can't do this. But then there's a part that's deep inside of you that's thinking, this is happening. And we both know this is happening. And at this time, this is going to happen. You know what I mean? There's a part of you that's like, it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. And then there's another part of you that's like, this can't happen. And it's just so beautifully shown in this film with those two, you know?
Yeah, you might be thinking to yourself, if you're in his shoes or something, you're thinking, "No, I'm not going to do this." And there's a moment when after he kills that person and he goes, "I was 2 years, Marshall. I was 2 years clean." And then the next shot is him going to basically like an AA meeting for addicts. And he
Mm-hmm.
stands up and he goes, "My name is Earl Brooks. And I'm an addict." And they clap for him and he kind of walks away. And then even Marshall is standing there and he's like, "You're such a hypocrite." And he goes, "What you really should say is, I'm Earl Brooks and I just killed 2 people last night." Like, that's what he says. And Mr. Brooks is like, "Yep, but I need to come here. I need to get my head straight. I went 2 years without it because of these meetings. I need to come back and not do it again." But it's kind of like, that he doesn't want to do it anymore and he wants to put it behind him. But like what you just said, it's like, you might be able to push it off for now. You might be able to kind of like control your urges now, but at some point, you're going to do it again. And you
Yeah.
know it. And I know it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what's terrifying about him, is that he knows that. And he just, dude, he is such a cool character, Mr. Brooks.
I don't mean to get like off track or anything, or like too deep into something right now, or too deep into this kind of conversation of being addicted to anything. But has anybody ever that's like been truly addicted to something, have they ever gone their entire life without doing it again? Has anyone ever truly done that? It's
Well,
just makes me wonder, you know?
and it makes me wonder. Da-da-dum. All right. So, anyways, when it comes to what you just said, you and I actually both were addicted to smoking cigarettes back in the
Oh
day.
yeah.
And you and
Yeah.
I, since then, have both quit successfully. And I have zero intention of ever putting a cigarette to my lips again. And I'm sure you are the same exact way. Um, so, to answer your question, I can tell you one thing that I know 100% is that I'll never smoke a cigarette again. That's just one thing I'll never do. And I know you won't either. But there has been times where I have quit, and I quit for a few years, and then I had another cigarette.
Yeah.
with you. And it turned me into smoking again full time for another few years, and then I quit again. But this time I have, purpose. I got a wife
Yeah.
and kids. But yeah, dude, like when you're an addict, you're addicted. There's a reason you're addicted. So it's like,
Yeah.
and that's what one thing that Mr. Brooks makes clear in this movie several times is, I don't do this because I enjoy this. I do it because I'm addicted to it. And that's one thing he warns Dane Cook's character about when we get into him, is that he tells him, Mr. Smith, I don't do this because I enjoy it. I do it because I'm addicted. So I'm warning you that if you like doing it, it's very hard to stop doing it.
Yeah.
And Dane Cook's all like, yeah, let's do it, So I guess
Yeah.
let's just talk about Dane Cook now. So what happens is, in the beginning, Mr. Brooks, he has like this award given to him for being like the #1 man of the year or something like that. And then he's driving home with his wife, and his wife is like, what's up? Like, what's in your head? What's going on? And because of Marshall's character, that he is basically saying like, I want to go kill somebody right now, but he can't tell his wife that. And so when he's driving home, he makes up this bullcrap reason to go get some ice cream with his wife, because the ice cream parlor is like right next to the dance studio that the couple he
Yeah.
wants to kill is. And he wants to get get his eyes on that couple and stuff. And then when he gets home, he tells his wife that I'm going to go out and I'm going to go do some work at the office or whatever. I'll be out late. But really, he
No,
leaves.
I'm sorry. I just one thing about this that I just want to say that I found very interesting is that he says that he's going to go do some glazes because he's got like a hobby where he like creates like, what is it, like porcelain or something like that, where he like like some kind of artistic porcelain design or something like that, and he uses that excuse, even though he actually does do that. He uses that because that's where he goes to like burn evidence and stuff, like in his little studio where he like creates like some kind of pottery or some weird something like that. You just watched it. What was it?
Well, see, the thing is that it doesn't necessarily completely show that he does glazing or anything like that. It's just, but that is the excuse. He tells him, he goes, I'm gonna go to the studio. I'm gonna do some glazing or something like that. So like, don't wait up. And then the wife's like, okay, but if I'm asleep when you get back, wake me up because I want a bone. That's exactly what she means too.
Yeah.
And so he like leaves and he kills these people, and then when, like you said, when he comes back, he's got pictures of the people, and he like cleans out his vacuum, he vacuums out his car, he like takes his clothes off, he burns his clothes along with the pictures of the couple that he just killed in the incinerator that he apparently does use for glazing or something like that.
Right.
But it doesn't completely full on show that he has like a glazing thing. It just kind of looks like a room, like a garage with all this in it.
You're right. It doesn't actually ever show anything, does it?
No.
It looks like a place where I guess that's just kind of what I've always thought. I've seen this movie a handful of times, at least 5 times, and I've just always kind of assumed that it was some kind of like pottery, porcelain work or something like that. But anyway, it's not important. I just wanted to throw that. I thought that was a very interesting part of like what his excuse to like have some alone time to himself, you know.
Yeah, and not just alone time, but like one thing we've been praising Mr. Brooks about is that he's so like methodical, and everything
Yeah.
he does, he like plans out to the T. And so that he only built that room with the incinerator and stuff in there for that specific reason. And he's masking it with the porcelain thing or whatever, the glazing or something. But that's what he uses to clean up his mess, which is so freaking brilliant. It's awesome. So let's talk about
Dude,
the first.
ridiculously brilliant. Yeah.
I know he's a genius, and so let's talk about the first murders of the movie, the ones that like it's pretty much the big murder that caps off everything,
Yeah.
and it's basically this couple that's making love naked, which awesome hot sex scene, dude. I love that.
Yeah.
Sex scene. Like they're just getting into it. Like that guy's like a Latino dude. This chick's like a redhead. They're both dancers. Like that they have some good loving. And so Mr. Brooks sneaks into their house quietly. It's like he knows exactly the layout of the house as well because he travels through it in the dark. And then he goes into the room, takes his little silencer gun out, puts the bag around it, tightens it up with his mouth, and then he just walks up to the couple and he's like watching them have sex. And like they're doing it and he's just standing in the room. They don't realize he's there. And then he goes, hello. And then like the girl looks at him and she just screams and he's like, don't do that, pretty much. And he just caps them both in the head and kills both of them, and they both die naked. And that's when you realize that the curtains were left open. And that's when Marshall is like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
This is a big mistake. You should have thought about
Yeah.
this. And then basically right after that, he goes and cleans up his mess. And one thing I wanted to talk about is his acting in this scene when he goes home and he's basically like, he takes his boots off, he vacuums out his car, and then he has the pictures that he's looking of the couple that he just killed.
Yeah.
And he's butt naked in the scene, and he's just
Yeah.
crouched over and he's looking at them like it's like a fat kid with like candy in his hand. He's just looking
Yeah.
at it like, oh, this candy.
Like about to throw it away, you know?
Yeah, and he's just like, and he's doing that prayer again, that prayer that he said in the beginning of the movie. He's basically like, God, forgive me for what I can't control, like what I can't do, and like, and he's like, I'm sorry, and you can just tell that he's like hurting over it, but he also like is addicted to it. It's like
Yeah.
when I'm just gonna use cigarettes again. It's like when you quit smoking for like a few weeks and you're like really proud of your accomplishments, and then you just give in that one time you smoke a cigarette, and at first you're like, oh, that first drag feels so good. But then when you're done with it, you're like, I'm hecka disappointed in myself.
It's very interesting you talking about this part of the movie because I didn't take it that way. Well, first of all, one thing I want to touch on real quick is when he first enters the place and he's got like the bag around the gun, like around his gun and his silencer, and he uses his teeth to tighten the zip tie. It just kind of cements like how careful and how methodical and meticulous he is with this. He doesn't make mistakes. He's not gonna get caught because he has every base covered. He doesn't make mistakes until he makes the obvious mistake, which kicks the movie off. And then he kind of even says, like, it's almost like I kind of want to get caught, you know? And because there's no way that I would let something so stupid happen, you know? But to get back to when he's sitting in the room where the incinerator is and he's throwing the pictures in and burning all the evidence, he's sitting there naked. I never took it like that. When I was watching this scene, every time I've ever watched it, I never took it as him like feeling guilty and like what have I done? Like the way that I took it is he's looking at these pictures like they're his most treasured possession ever. Like he loves that couple that he just murdered and he loves seeing them dead in his pictures, and he's in love with his addiction, and he just it's so passionate. And even Marshall's standing in the room silent, just like total serious, no jokes. And he's sitting there like kind of rocking back and forth and burning it because he knows he has to stay safe, even though he wants to keep those as like a
Memoir.
yeah, like a like
Momentum.
a souvenir,
Yeah, souvenir.
and he's so addicted and he loves it. I never took that as him like feeling guilty. I took it as him parting with something that he's in love with passionately, but he has to get rid of it.
Well, I don't necessarily completely think it's just him feeling guilty. And if I said that, I guess that's not what I meant.
That's not
Um,
exactly what you said,
okay,
but that's
because
just the way I took it.
I feel like what I said and what you said is like a combination of how he feels. I feel
Yeah,
like a part of him treasures it, like you said. Like it's like, oh, look at what I did. Look at my masterpiece of what I did. Because he even rearranges the bodies to like look like she's kind of giving him oral pleasures,
yeah,
and he's like has pictures of the bodies just. And he put them in several positions, not just one. And he's looking at all of them, and he's just like you said, rocking back and forth. And like I do feel like it's kind of like, oh my god, like I that guilt of giving into the temptation when he has done so good for so long, and but also at the same time like loving what he's looking at. And when he first kills the couple, he shoots them each in the head, and he like puts his arms out and he puts his head up in the air, and he just
yeah,
like takes this breath. He's like, oh, like,
yeah,
oh my god, the feeling of killing is just straight heroin to my veins.
yeah,
And then like he just like he just rubs himself, and he's just like, dude, you know that feeling that he's just like, oh my god, this
yeah,
feels so good. And then he also has that same moment when he knows he has to put those pictures into the fire, like you said. And he's like, dude, his acting right there, like he looks down at the picture and then he looks up, and then he looks back down, then he looks up and he looks back down one more time because it's like trying to just, you got to get that last memory burn into your brain. And then when he
Yeah.
throws it into the fire, I'm not trying to sound funny, but he reminded me of Rose from Titanic at the end when she like drops the heart of the ocean into the
Yeah.
ocean and she goes, ah, right, and she drops it. He kind of makes a similar sound
He
when he throws it in,
does.
and he goes, oh, because he's like, he's giving away his, that's the last thing that he's gonna have.
Yes. Dude, you're so freaking right, man. I unfortunately I was super busy today and I wasn't able to watch the movie today like you did. Trust me, I really wanted to. I love this movie. But I forgot about that. And I remembered it right when you said that, when he kind of just drops the last of it and it's not like a super corny noise like people listening to this right now. It's not cringy, it's not corny. The way that he does it is completely expertly acted. You believe it 100%. He's throwing away something that he does not want to throw away, but he has to do it, and he knows that. And the sound that he makes when he does it is just emotion, just in the purest form, and it's just, you know what I mean? Oh man, I know you know what I mean, but man, I really want to know what people think in the comment section. I can't wait to read it. You know?
Me too. And I hope this episode gets a lot of attention and views because there's so much in this that I want to hear from people, like what they thought. Um, and always comment down in the comments, like let us know what you thought because I want
Yes.
to converse with you guys in the comment section. But okay, so after he kills the people, after he throws his stuff away, he's at his job and he owns like a box business and he's really wealthy. And it jump cuts to a taxi dropping off some girl outside of his job, and he's meeting up with some sort of like these Chinese executives or whatever for a box that he designed for them. And over the intercom, it says, "Mr. Brooks, your daughter is here." And so he goes upstairs and he goes and talks to his daughter, and she goes, "Daddy, basically I'm here because I dropped out of college and I want to just be part of the box business like with you, and God forbid something ever happens to you and I would take it over, you know?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, we'll talk to your mom about this or whatever." And simultaneously at the same time, you're introduced to Dane Cook's character, who's sitting in the lobby waiting to talk to Mr. Brooks, and he's acting pretty much impatient, like, "Hurry up! I got something that Mr. Brooks is going to want to see, and I need to see him now." And so
Yes.
the receptionist comes into the room and she gives him the envelope and she's like, "There's the guy outside, says you're going to be really interested in what he has to show you, and it's kind of like important." So Mr. Brooks takes it, and as he's talking to his daughter, he pulls the pictures out, and you see that it's a picture of him basically after he just committed those murders. He got caught because those blinds were open, and Dane
Yeah.
Cook lives across the street on the third story, basically facing that window, and he used to take pictures of the couple having sex because they kept their blinds open. And so he caught Mr. Brooks committing those murders. And so basically, Mr. Brooks is like, "Okay, show him to the conference room. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go talk to him, see what he has to say about this." And the first thing that happens when he walks in is Dane Cook's character goes, "I'm not here to blackmail you." And he goes, "Okay, then why are you here?" And he goes, "I'm here because I used to think photographing those people having sex was like the biggest rush I could get." He goes, "And that's what I thought until I saw you kill them. And that was the biggest rush I've ever got. Seeing you kill somebody just gave me this, oh, you know." And he's just like, "It
Yeah.
felt so good." And he goes, "So I'm not blackmailing you. I'm not here for money. I'm not here to turn you in. But what I want is I want you to take me with you next time you kill somebody. That's what I want. And if you
And I
don't, then
want
I'll go
that
to
to
the
be
police."
soon.
Yeah. And I want it to be soon. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about Dane Cook, dude, because like there are some people that I've talked to about this movie and they were like, "Yeah, it's good, but Dane Cook though, like really Dane Cook?" And I'm like, dude, he does a good job in this movie, like a real
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah. I it's I think it's a testament to his acting ability, because every other thing I've ever seen him in was a comedy. Like, I loved him in Good Luck Chuck. I thought that movie was so funny and so good. I loved him in Employee of the Month. That's honestly one of my favorite movies ever. I love that movie. And to see him in this movie, he killed it. He killed it. And for people to kind of typecast, stereotype him like he's a comedy, he's a comedian. Yeah, he is, but not in this movie. In this movie, he's a creep and an asshole, and he pulls it off. Like, I do not think that he was miscast at all. I think he played his character perfectly.
Yeah, and this movie came out in 2007, and at that time, 2007 was his peak of
Yeah,
comedy. That's when he was doing Madison Square Garden, doing the Vicious Circle tour, and that's when he was like Dane Cook was the king of
yeah,
comedians. And so to put him in here just at that time, it's just like I understand he's like popular, but why Dane Cook? Why a comedian in this very specific role? But then when you
yeah,
watch him, you're just like, oh, I get it. Like he like nails it. Like you said, he's a creep. He's a weirdo, and you can tell that he's just like, oh, he just wants to get off on killing somebody. And then you have that moment basically where like they're looking for somebody to kill. And he goes, Mr. Brooks goes, okay, meet me on this corner at this time. I will pick you up. And dude, there's actually one really funny part that's kind of like awesome. And I'm glad they threw this in. Mr. Brooks and Marshall are parked in their car across the street and it's pouring down rain. And they
yeah.
see Dane Cook, and Dane Cook's walking, kind of like looking for him, doesn't know where Mr. Brooks is at. And then Marshall goes, why don't you honk the horn and then have him cross the street? By our
Maybe
luck,
he'll get hit by a car.
he'll get hit by a car, and then this whole problem will go away. And so then Mr. Brooks honks the horn, and Dane Cook starts to cross the street, and he almost gets hit by a car. And they go, whoa, almost.
Yeah,
Like, how funny would that have been if that happened? Like, wow, okay, our
yeah,
problem is completely gone, you know?
yeah. I really love that scene too. Like when Marshall says like maybe he'll get hit by a car and then you don't have to worry about this or whatever he says. And then they have like a good laugh between them. Like Kevin Costner's character actually laughs, like starts laughing. And then as he crosses the streets, he like some car honks and like swerves and he's like, whoa, almost. It's like, just that subtle, perfectly, oh man, just the perfect little slice of humor to throw in there. Not too much, not too little, just perfect.
It is, dude. It's completely perfect, and like that's why this movie is so good. It's like because it's definitely a moment to make you like kind of chuckle a little bit, but it doesn't take you out of like the drama that you're about to get into. Like they're about to go try and find someone to kill,
Yeah,
and they don't take away like the mood and they don't ruin it like some movies do. They keep it perfectly balanced. So Dan Cook gets in the car. They're starting to drive around, and what Mr. Brooks tells him, he goes, "Look, he goes, pretty much I swore off killing until the other night, and he goes, and the only reason that I'm doing this is because basically you're making me." And he goes, and because you're making me, this is going to be your party. This is for you. So we're going to find someone that you want to kill. And then Dane Cook mentions, he goes, okay, can it be somebody I know? And then Mr. Brooks just basically tells him, like, no, you cannot kill somebody that you know. It's too easy to get caught that way. It's got to be somebody random. And I thought that was so genius to throw that in there
yeah.
because I'm not saying I thought about killing anybody before, but if I ever were to kill somebody, wouldn't you think that you would kill somebody that you like hate? Like that's why you'd want to kill somebody?
And that's how it, just like he says in the movie, he says, you never kill someone you know. It's the easiest way to get caught. It always has to be someone that you've never met, that you don't know who they are. You know what I mean? That they have no idea who you are, no connection. Because if you cover all your tracks, I'm not trying to teach people how to get away with killing someone, but if you cover all of your tracks, get rid of all the evidence, and you kill someone that you not know, how the hell can you get caught? There's no connection. And that's what he's telling Dane Cook. He even kind of, when Dane Cook says, like, can it be someone I know? And then, like, Kevin Costner almost kind of gives, like, a little bit of a chuckle kind of a thing. And he's like, no, it cannot be someone you know. That's the easiest way to get caught, you know? Like, that's like the number one rule, you know?
Yeah. And also, basically, simultaneously at the same time, it's also showing Demi Moore's side where she's at the place where Mr. Brooks killed those two people in the beginning. And that's how you kind of like get the backstory about who he is because she's walking around and she's like, were the lights on or were they off? Because I know you, and I know you wouldn't risk missing a shot because the lights were off. So they must have been on. Were these curtains open or were they closed? Because you wouldn't have them open because you'd get caught. And then she goes, where's the vacuum? And she even goes into the closet and she goes, I'll bet you $100. She's talking to her partner. She goes, I bet you $100 that I'll open up this vacuum and there'll be no bag on the inside. And she opens it up and sure enough, the bag is gone because Kevin Costner vacuumed up everything and then removed the bag so there's no evidence inside. And it's just these little tiny things that just shows you that this guy is a freaking professional murderer and he
Yeah.
knows every way to not get caught. It's just so brilliant, and it just shows you how smart Mr. Brooks is. So I love her side story for that one scene, for that one reason right there. Everything else you
Yeah.
just throw away.
Yeah, because the reason why you love that scene with her is because she's investigating Mr. Brooks and her attention is focused on him and how meticulous and expert he is at killing people. But whenever it starts showing her life and everything, it's just like, I don't care. I don't care about this, you know?
Yeah, like I said, it's like the writers didn't have confidence that the Brooks stuff would be like enough. They were
Yeah,
like, we have to have some sort of action. It's like, no, you don't, dude. If you have a
right.
well written movie, you don't need action. You know, you just need that great dialogue that they have.
Yeah. You
Um,
know, real quick before you move on, I just want to just touch one more moment on that shootout scene that you talked about at towards the end of the movie with her storyline and her and that killer that got out of prison and is trying to kill her. And there it's just like when she's like in the hallway and they're like the shooting the lights out and stuff with that like music that's playing, and it's just like, what the freaking hell were they thinking putting this in the same movie? Like, so cringy, unrealistic, just horrible. You know, I just don't understand what the director was thinking, or the writer for that matter.
which is the same person, but also,
Oh, it was.
yeah,
Oh, the person that directed this movie wrote it too.
yeah.
Oh, I did. I did not know that. That's crazy. Okay.
I didn't say it. I guess I should have said it. Shame on me. But what you're saying about the whole shootout scene, like not only is that like super corny and stupid and ridiculous, but also his name was Meek. That was the character, Meeks, who
Yeah.
escaped. And he has this like girlfriend. And honestly, dude, like they're the most stereotypical cliche bad guys that you have in movies. Like he's got the bald head and the tribal neck tattoo and
And
he's
the
all
wife beater.
and the wife beater, and then like the girl is like she's a burnout with like piercings and stuff, and it's just like, can you guys like just be realistic? Not every freaking bad guy in a movie looks like that, you
I
know. And
know.
it's so dude, it just takes me out of the movie when they have characters like that, and it just pisses me off. And that whole ending shootout scene was like pretty much bullcrap. I did kind of like though when she does shoot Meeks and they're on the ground or whatever, and he pulls up the gun and he like shoots his girlfriend in the head and then he offs himself. That part was kind of cool, but other than that, like totally unnecessary and unneeded. And he even has like that moment when he kidnaps Detective Atwood and they're in the van and they're doing like some high speed chase like
Yeah.
throughout town. It's just so stupid and cliche. And he's got a gun pointed to her and he's like, I'm gonna kill you. I already have a place that I want to hang you. And it's just like,
Yeah.
dude, this is so dumb. Like this is so
Yeah.
dumb.
And then, like, if the van gets hit by something, and doesn't she fly out the side of it and land on a windshield? It's like, am I watching a Fast and Furious movie right now? How can you do this and then go back to the brilliance that is the Mr. Brooks storyline? Like, no wonder this movie is not praised by critics, because this whole part of it, her flying out the side of the van and onto a windshield, like, what were you thinking? You can't put this kind of bull crap in a brilliant storyline like Mr. Brooks. I bet you anything. If Kevin Costner was on this podcast with us right now and he was able to freely tell us what he thought, he would say, yeah, I thought that was bull crap. I gave this role my everything. I committed myself to this role 100%. And when I went to go see this movie at the premiere, watching Demi Moore fly out the van onto a windshield with all this bullcrap, I thought it was garbage.
It was pure
I think
garbage.
Kevin Costner really feels that way.
Yeah, dude. Maybe honestly, maybe that's also part of why they didn't have a sequel. Maybe they were just like, nah, can't do it. And
Maybe Kevin Costner might have watched the final cut, like saw it at the premiere or something, was like, no, I'm not going to do this again. You know, I think this director messed it up. I gave this role everything I had, and this movie is stupid. And he might have thought that simply because of all of this side storyline with the detective that we're talking about. And I really hope that, you know, that we're not ruining this movie. For those of you that have decided to ignore us and just listen to this podcast and that have not seen this movie, please do not make the decision to not see this movie because of what we're talking about. This movie is well worth seeing it because of Kevin Costner alone. I promise you, you will not regret it. It's so good.
Yeah,
But
and that's why we said up front in the non-spoiler section, like when we gave our ratings, like I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I have to knock it for the crappy Demi Moore storyline. Because if she wasn't in this, this would easily be a 10 or 11 out of 10. You know, because
mhm,
it's so good, and that's why I still gave it a 9 though, because the Kevin Costner stuff is so beyond good that it kind of like drowns out the crappiness of Demi Moore's. Like you can kind of just deal with her side story just to get back to the sweet, sweet action of the Kevin Costner stuff.
yeah, I,
Um, okay, so let's get back to when Dane Cook, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Brooks are in the car together and they're driving, and they have a montage of them looking around trying to find someone to kill. And you just see people like at car dealerships, like just random people, do husbands and wives, old people, young people, and basically you're just like searching for someone you want to kill, some random person. And then this car cuts off Dane Cook and Mr. Brooks, and Dane Cook's like, that guy, like what an a-hole, like screw you. And then Kevin Costner goes, do you want to kill that guy of the truck? And he's like, yeah, I've always wanted to kill somebody who f's with me in traffic. And
yeah.
like that moment, that line is so relatable, because it's like, how
Well,
many, dude, do you know how many times I contemplate murder every single day on the freeway? Like when you have that one person that's just like zooming in and out of traffic, and
I
you're like, dude,
know.
I want that person so bad to just like skid off the road and smash into a light pole.
I don't I don't want to make you sound evil right now, but I don't think that. What I really want to happen is to see them get pulled over is what I really want to see. And it never happens. But one part of that scene that you're talking about that I loved so much is just going back to that relationship between Marshall and which is Kevin Costner's kind of conscience in this movie. And his conscience that we're talking about is like played by a character that's like always around Mr. Brooks that nobody else can see. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about that character. And when Dane Cook starts going off on this truck that like pulled out and cut them off, he's like, screw him, he's an a-hole, you know. And then it's just kind of silent for a second. And then Marshall is sitting in the back seat, even though Dane Cook can't see him because he's not a real person. He's just in Mr. Brooks's mind. He leans forward from the back seat and he's like, maybe Mr. Smith would like to kill the driver of that truck. And Mr. Brooks just like sits there for a second and then he looks over and he's like, maybe you want to kill the driver of the truck. You know, it's so good, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's that Marshall dialogue with Mr. Brooks that just is so brilliant and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I like the moment when Mr. Brooks goes, well, do you want to kill the driver of the truck or do you want to kill the owner of the truck? Because they might not be the same person. And he goes, the
Yeah.
driver. And he goes, what if the driver's a woman? Do you have a problem killing a woman? And he goes, nah, an a-hole's an a-hole. And then that's when
And then
they start laughing like, ha, 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 ha. Like this guy's
yeah,
a
him
goofball.
and Marshall start laughing, but I think it's supposed to be shown in that scene that Mr. Brooks is laughing in his mind because didn't you take it that way that he doesn't actually laugh out loud, that he's just kind of laughing in his mind with Marshall because of that was a funny comment that
Yeah.
Dane Cook made, you know.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I thought to myself while I was watching this, like, man, I would love to do like a cut of this movie where I took out parts, and I want to do a cut where I take out all of the Marshall stuff. I want to just take all of those scenes out, not because I don't love them to death or anything, but I started realizing, and this watching it tonight was the first time I truly realized this, was that basically when he's talking to Marshall, it's kind of like time freezes, the real life world freezes, and then it carries back on the minute he's done thinking to himself. Because if you really were trying to think of like real time, he has moments where he talks for like a good minute or two to Marshall and he has a whole conversation with him. And if you're really thinking about like Dane Cook just staring at him like, hello, I'm talking to you, like it wouldn't make sense. There's so many times where somebody's trying to talk to him and he's in his own mind. So I started to realize, okay, like the minute that Dane Cook's like, I want you to take me with you and I want it to be soon. It's like pause. And then everything he talks about with Marshall happens and then unpause. And so I want to take out all those scenes and just see what it would look like without him having that inner monologue.
That would be really interesting to see. Dude, you should do that. I mean, you could put it on YouTube as like an unlisted video, not monetized or anything, you know.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to see. I don't know. I wonder if the movie would still make sense. You know, I don't know.
Well, yeah, because then you basically would be seeing it from like the other character's point of view because you don't know what's going on in his head. You just hear
Yeah,
what he has to say. So I don't know. Maybe one day I'll do that. I don't even know how to do that,
yeah,
but I think it would be interesting. Um, so, anyways, so they find out like they follow this truck and they want to kill this guy. So that's the guy they're gonna kill. So they pull up to where this truck is parked and they're like, get his license plate number, find out everything there is to know about this guy, and then we will kill them. And Dane Cook's like, wait, what do you mean we're not killing him tonight? And he's like, no. He's like, you got to be smart about this. You can't just kill somebody the minute you see them. You'll get caught. You got to do your research and plan it out. Be methodical. And Dane
yeah,
Cook's like, ugh. And basically, there's several times where Mr. Brooks kind of gives him like the wraparound, or whatever phrase I'm trying to say, the ring around or something, where he's like, hey, I can't do it tonight, do it tomorrow. Can't do it tonight, do it tomorrow. And Dane Cook at some point gets pissed and he goes, I've been pretty patient. And he goes, maybe the reason we're not killing this person tonight is because you feel like you don't have to anymore. But guess what? Like you basically do, so like, let's
yeah,
get this going. And then also there's another kind of third part of the movie where Mr. Brooks's daughter is at home and she is arguing with her mom, and Mr. Brooks comes downstairs and he's like, what's going on? And the mom goes, why don't you tell your dad like the real reason you dropped out of college? And then the daughter tells her dad, she goes, well, I'm pregnant. And she goes, don't worry about it though, because like I might not keep it. And Mr. Brooks is like, you will not get an abortion. There will be
yeah,
no abortions. And
yeah.
she
He
goes,
says like there will be no abortion, and she's
yeah.
just like, you don't want to say that to a woman or a girl that's, just got pregnant and she's like a teenager, and it's just super dramatic. Yeah,
And she's like, this is my body and this is like what I do, what I want to do with it. And he goes, I'm sorry. I said it wrong. He goes, like, what I kind of meant to say is that having a grandchild would be a blessing and that we
yeah,
would help you raise it and stuff. And I was like, dude, what a cool dad. But
yeah.
then
Well,
Marshall's in the back.
also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just what your reaction to that, like exactly, like just what a cool dad. But also, just being able to just kind of stop. I feel like this is something in my personal life that I wish I could do more often, and I'm sure other people would agree. Like sometimes when you're feeling so emotional or even upset about something, and somebody says something to you and you react so quickly, and you're like, there will be no abortion. And she's like, no, dad, you're not going to tell me what to do with my body. And then instead of going on the defense and continuing, he kind of rethinks it for a second and realizes this is not going to work. I can say this in a different way that sounds a lot better and that's still true. He's not lying. So what he says is, you're right, I said it wrong. What I meant was is that a baby would be a wonderful gift for your mother and I. And just hearing him say that, it's just like, dude, you are a goddamn genius. You know what I mean? Like just to be able to regroup that quickly, and it worked. it's just brilliant, brilliant writing.
It's totally brilliant. And what I love in that same scene is Marshall's also in the background and he's like, I told you that wasn't it. I told you that there was something else. And he goes, but she's still not telling you
Yeah,
everything. There's
something
still
bigger.
something bigger is happening. And
Yeah,
and then also like within the same breath, like the dad, well, not the same breath, but this is a different scene. But the dad, Mr. Brooks, asks her, he goes, what happened to your BMW? And she's like, oh, and you could tell she's lying. She's like, I'm gonna have a friend drive it down here next weekend. And he's like, okay. And then
right.
also soon after that, a bunch of like a detective, sorry, I keep burping. Two detectives come up to Mr. Brooks's house, and at first you're probably like, oh snap, like they're coming for Mr. Brooks. Like they figured something out, right? And but then they're like, hi, there was basically a murder at your daughter's college, and we need to talk to your daughter and stuff. And he's like, what? And then they question her, and basically like you find out that there was a murder at her college, and that kid who got killed got chopped to death by a hatchet, and then the hatchet was left at the scene. It wasn't even like cleaned up or anything. And Mr. Brooks, like, he keeps his cool and everything's good, but then he like goes into the kitchen and he drinks some water, and Marshall is standing with him, And dude, this moment is so good where Mr.
Yeah.
Brooks is standing there and he's like starting to cry and he has his hands over his mouth and he's like, oh my God, like, oh my God, oh my God. And then like Marshall is like, you know, she did it, right? And he's like, yeah, I know she did it. And he goes, I feared that this would happen way before she was even born. I didn't
Yeah.
even like, and he goes, and she has what I have. Basically, she killed that guy, and that's why she's lying. And he goes, I asked her what happened to the car, and she said her friend was going to drive it, and then I watched her lie to a policeman in front of me and say that it got stolen, and like he is just breaking down because he knows his daughter's a monster the way he's a monster. And
Yeah,
he,
but also she's a monster just like him, but she's being stupid about it. And she's going to get herself caught by lying and doing stupid stuff by leaving the weapon at the crime scene. And he's just like super broken up about it and crying, like you said. And it's just so emotional. And you feel for him so hard, so good.
yeah, and one thing that they say is that, like you said, is that Marshall goes, see, you did it, but you're smart about it, and she's stupid, so she's gonna get caught. And then he says, like, maybe I should just let her get caught. Maybe I shouldn't clean up this mess after her because in order for me to really protect my daughter, like she needs to be locked away so that way she can't hurt anybody else. Because if I don't lock her up, she's gonna kill again. And so he's like has this inner battle with himself, like, do I turn my daughter, not turn her in, but do I like not help her get out of this, or do I help her? And then at the end of that he goes, but she's my daughter and I love her. And basically Marshall is like, don't do this, let her rot, don't help her out. But Mr. Brooks decides like, no, I'm gonna do it. And he goes down into his little workshop where he has the incinerator and stuff, and he pulls out the flooring and he opens up this like safe, and it's got like a gun, it's got a bunch of fake IDs and like costumes and stuff. And then you see that he's on a plane and he's flying to wherever her college was, and he's got this like, I will kind of knock the movie a little bit for this, like that fake mustache and beard and sideburns and stuff looks pretty bad.
Yeah, but it's not that good of a costume, but like I kind of want to come to that costume's defense in the way that when it shows him like get back from helping, like covering up. So basically what he does, huge spoiler alert right now again, is he goes to the college and kills another person with the hatchet, and then uh, leaves. So basically, it's proven because the detectives found that his daughter was like in a different state, so they can't possibly think that she's the one that did it anymore because another one took place when she was nowhere near that college, and so and he did it the same way that she did, left the hatchet there and everything. But then when the bus drops him off when he's going back home from doing that, it shows him like walking slow, like a very elderly man, like limping and stuff for like a long while until like the coast is clear. And then he just gets in a car and drives away. And even though the costume and stuff looked kind of dumb and cheap, like his performance, like pulling it off like an old man or something, I thought it was really good. And I never had a problem with it.
I think that costume was fine. The old man costume with the cane is like fine. Honestly, since I hadn't seen this in the last few months, I was like, who's that guy? Because like he pulled it off. I thought it was some old guy, and I was like, is that the guy that he kills or something? Like, oh no, that's him. But I'm talking more so like when he's on the airplane and he's got like those big 70s glasses and he's got like a big handlebar mustache and those big choppy sideburns with an earring and long hair.
Oh, I remember that. Okay, I'm sorry. I remember what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one looks pretty bad.
yeah, and I agree. But at the same time, maybe it looks so bad. I'm kind of asking you this. Maybe do you think that it looks so bad because it works so well, because it's so off the wall, not associated to how he really is, like with his earring and stuff like that, to where you just look at him like that and you can't take him seriously because you know what his character truly is, and you're like, he just looks completely stark different from what he truly is? Or do you really just think it looked ridiculous?
I think it looked ridiculous. One, because the mustache looked really fake. That's why I think it really looked ridiculous. But also, it
Okay.
kind of reminds me of like your classic woman who's trying to like hide herself. So she wears like a hat and then a scarf over it with big old black glasses. and it's like a trench coat, and you're like, yeah, because you're not obviously trying to disguise yourself or hide yourself from somebody. Like, you honestly bring more attention to yourself trying to not bring attention to yourself. And that's kind of what I felt with this costume, is that it was so over the top with the big glasses, the mustache, the long hair, the earring, the all jean jacket outfit he's wearing. Like, I felt like, honestly, like, you're kind of drawing more attention to yourself than if you would have just had maybe just the long hair and a beard or something. Like, you didn't need the whole handlebar mustache and stuff. You
Yeah.
know, that's all I mean by that. But honestly, it really doesn't bother me. But what he does is he cleans up the murder, like you were saying, and like, so basically, like, there's now an alibi for his daughter because she was at home during the taking place of this murder. And dude, I started to think about that. Like, he went out there, and it doesn't necessarily say who he killed, but I'm gonna put my money on it that he murdered a student.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's the way that I've always taken it too.
So now imagine what he was doing. He went into somebody's house or dorm or something with a hatchet, and he hatcheted down a child.
Yeah, like a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah, this
Um,
isn't like your Latin couple
well,
that's in their
I
30s.
mean, it's not like a 13-year-old, but it's like a 20-year-old, you know. Um, but he enjoys killing. So it never really occurred to me that maybe he had a problem doing that. Like, that's not his preferred way of killing, although he does make a comment at the end of the movie, that I want to get into when we talk about the end, like the very end, um, that he has killed people in many different ways. And so I don't think that it was really like a problem for him to do it. I think it was just kind of inconvenient for him to do that. Like, it's just not a way that he would have wanted to do at the way that, like, he's addicted to it. So when he kills people the way that he really wants to, it's just a quick bullet in the head. You know, he's kind of matured past that, like wanting to like chop someone up with a hatchet. It's kind of below him. It's immature. It's like an immature kind of way to want to kill someone. And he's just not about that anymore, even though he says at the end of the movie, like, I've killed people in a lot of different ways, because he's been addicted to this for years. But at that point of his life, he's like, what, 60, late 50s, and
I'd
he's
say like
get that
55.
high. He's just trying to get that high of killing someone. So when he does it his way, it's just quick, like bam, bam, done. Not like super bloody and messy and over the top. And he only did that because he was trying to save his daughter. So,
Yeah, but he makes a comment to Marshall when he's debating, should I go through this, should I not go through this? And he says, like, I kill people. He goes, but I've never killed somebody for this reason before. And so,
yeah,
like, I'm kind of debating what you said about, you're like, when he kills people, he is addicted. He loves it. He gets off on it pretty much. But in this situation, he's not doing it for that reason. He's doing it for a different one. And so you can tell that it feels wrong, because Marshall even asks him, he goes, so how do you feel? And he goes, I feel dirty. Like, that's not something that he planned out that he wanted to do. This isn't him giving into his urges, and he did something that's out of his character as a murderer, and he doesn't like that about himself. He didn't like what he just had to do, but he knew he had to do it because he wanted to save his daughter. And dude, honestly, that daughter pissed me off, because he comes home and he's talking to her, and he's like, yeah, there was another murder. And she goes, oh, like, really? And he's like, yeah, down to the hatchet being left at the scene. She's like, oh, well, that's good, I guess. I mean, even though I'm innocent, like, it's good to not be a suspect. And he's like, yeah. And then he walks away, and he comes back, and he asks his daughter, he goes, do you love me? And she's like, yeah, Dad, of course I love you. Why? And he's like, just, do you want to go have lunch with me? And she was like, maybe, but I don't feel very good or something. And he's like, okay. But like, he's asking because, like, Marshall even told him that, dude, your daughter's a murderer, and you might be the next murderer. She might kill you
yeah,
and try to take over that box company that you have. And he was just like, I don't know if she would do that. But now at this point, he's questioning that. He's like, I don't know if she would or she wouldn't. She's a
yeah.
murderer, and she might give into it. I don't know.
Dude, can you imagine? Just think for a second. You have a daughter. Can you imagine thinking something like that about your daughter one day, if whether or not, like, she's capable of killing someone, and wondering, is she capable of killing me?
Dude, I've honestly thought that about my kids. Not because
That's crazy.
not because my kids are crazy or anything, but like I've seen so many stories where it's like some teenager like falls in love with some boy and they're like, I want to be with you. And the parents are like, you shouldn't be with that boy. And they like get together and kill the parents to be together. I'm like,
Right.
dude, what if that
Dude,
happens?
dude, dude, I'm a stepfather. Imagine, I've thought about that too, and imagine how much more I think it's possible being a step parent. You know,
Yeah, pretty morbid, but you watch so much like murder stuff that you're like, you have to think of it sometimes.
dude, every kind of horror, every kind of scary scenario has entered my mind because of what I do for a living, which is narrate horror stories. I don't
E-
know.
Exactly. And so at this point, like Dane Cook is like, okay, let's get ready to kill that guy who's the driver of that vehicle. And Mr. Brooks is like, no, I changed my mind. We're not killing him. We're killing somebody else. And they want to go kill Meeks, like the crazy guy or whatever, but they end up not killing him either. Who they actually end up killing is the ex-husband of Detective Atwood, the one who's
Yeah,
requesting all this money from his ex-wife and stuff. He's actually having like an affair with his lawyer lady, and Dane Cook and Mr. Brooks go into that house and they end up killing that couple. But previous to that happening, they're on their way to go kill that couple, and Marshall's in the back seat and he goes, it smells like gun oil in here or something like that. And he goes, but not your gun. Mr. Smith has his own gun. And Mr. Brooks says, that's because after he goes through with this and sees me kill this, he's going to get up the courage and he's going to try to kill me. But he goes, like pretty much I'm ready to die. Like I'm kind of done with this life and I want to stay away from my family. And he writes them a note, basically like a suicide note saying like, I actually have a very horrible illness. It's going to kill me. And instead of you guys like seeing me deteriorate, I want to just kind of leave you guys with the good memory of me. So he writes that note out to his family. And basically after they kill this guy and his lover or whatever, even Dane Cook, he's just like, oh my god, and he like pisses down his leg in the apartment,
yeah.
and you're like, oh my god, dude, you are so screwed. Like you just left your DNA all over the crime scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mr. Brooks even calls him on that later on, like after that murder at the end when he kills those two people, they're in the car, and then Dane Cook and then Marshall even says, "Here comes the gun," and Mr. Brooks is like, "Yep." And then right after that, Dane Cook pulls the gun on him, and then they get into it like an argument, and well, not an argument, but a heated discussion, and trying to like a battle of wits. And Mr. Brooks is like, "Well, tell me this, genius. Like, you just left your DNA at the crime scene. You pissed your pants and left piss all over the floor." And then Dane Cook taps his head with his gun. He's like, "No, uh, I got pictures of you from the first murder." And then Mr. Brooks is like, "Yes, but what were you doing at the second murder?" It's like, dude, you're done, dude. You're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why the hell would you have been at the second murder? You know? And it's just
Well, on top of that, he's also like a super prime suspect right now from Doctor from Detective Atwood because she's knocking at the doors and stuff of the building across from the first murders, and she's like asking people like, "Have you seen anything?" And then she ends up knocking on Dane Cook's door, and he opens, and they actually kind of like bump into each other, and it's funny because Dane Cook drops the envelope of the pictures that he has of Mr. Brooks killing the people, and he like picks them back up, and she's like, "Hi," and she looks into his apartment and sees a bunch of like cameras and stuff. And she goes, "Oh, are you a photographer?" And he's like, "Nah, it's more just like a hobby than anything." And she's like, "Oh, did you hear about there was a murder?" And he was like, "Oh, across the street? Yeah." He's like, "I heard about that." And he's like, "Sorry, I don't really have any information for you, but I got to go." And so she's also like super suspect of him pretty much. And she thinks that he's like lying to her, which he totally is. And he's
yeah.
not giving her information that could solve this thumbprint killer case. And so now that he pissed all over the scene of like the next murder, like
Oh
she's
yeah.
gonna be like, "Oh, that's totally the guy."
Yeah. Yeah, totally done, dude. And even if the ending of this movie had gone a bit differently, I don't want to spoil it just yet, but I'll let you do that. But even if it had gone differently and Dane Cook were to show the detective later on, like, look, I had pictures of him from the first murder, she would still be like, "You're still going to prison. I suspected you were a part of this, and we found your DNA at another murder. Like, I'm convinced that you are both the murderers." You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you've been working together, or even if you haven't been working together, you're still like you lied to an officer or detective about information about a murderer that you knew. So
Yeah,
either way, dude, you're going down. And whether you're
yeah,
going down by yourself or with Mr. Brooks, you're still going down. So smart guy. And
yeah,
so I guess basically what happens is they drive to a cemetery, and Dane Cook, like he gets these balls, you know. He's like, "Yo, I got the gun on you." He's like, "You can drive, just keep going, keep driving." And they end up going to this cemetery that Mr. Brooks owns, and they walk in there, and there's already like a dugout grave that Mr. Brooks had went to previously, and he dug out a grave. And Dane Cook's like, "What's this?" And he goes, basically like, "You're gonna shoot me. I'm sick and tired of being alive. Like, just kill me." And I'm gonna fall into this hole, and you just take the shovel and you just cover me up, and then tomorrow, like nobody will know that I'm buried here. They'll think it's just like a new body or something. And Dan Cook's like, okay, and you can tell that he's like hesitant on killing Mr. Brooks, but eventually, like he like I don't remember exactly, but he like talks himself into it, and he pulls the trigger, but the gun jams. And he's like, what? And Mr. Brooks is like, I snuck into your apartment and I jammed your gun up because I figured you would do this, you know?
yeah,
And then like as Dane Cook's like, huh? Huh? And he's like trying to shoot the gun at Mr. Brooks takes a freaking, oh my God, takes a shovel and just like whacks Dane Cook across the throat and just cuts his freaking throat open, and Dane Cook is bleeding out everywhere.
yeah. But before he does that, remember he just like slams him on the head first with it. Remember, and it's like super like impactful. Like before he cuts his throat with the shovel, he just like hits him on the head hella hard with it.
Oh
And
yeah.
it just shows his reaction, and he's just like, did that really just happen? And then he cuts his throat. But you don't remember that?
No, I remember that, and it's
Okay.
awesome, and like I love that. And then Dane Cook like falls into the grave, and then Mr. Brooks was like, "So basically, what happened is I was pretty much ready to die." And he goes, "But just in the, I had the thought that I might not want to go through with it,
Yeah.
and so I have kind of a backup plan." And so he basically just pulled through his backup plan, and he ended up killing Dane Cook. Problem solved. Like everything's done, and Dane Cook dies in the grave, and he just gets buried up, and that's pretty much like the end of the movie. And Mr. Brooks like wipes his hands of it, and he goes home, and like when he's done with that whole crazy night, he goes home and he sees his daughter laying in bed and she's sleeping, looking beautiful and stuff. And earlier on, she's sleeping in bed, and he comes up and he gives her a kiss on the cheek and he whispers, "It's nice to have you home." And so at the end of the movie, she's sleeping in the same position again. And he walks up and he gives her a kiss. And as he is kissing her, it's like she's awake already. And she just like stabs him in the neck with scissors. And it's like this crazy, like orchestra, beautiful music playing in the background. And
And
he's
like
just
it's
like,
super gory and bloody.
yeah, spraying blood all over the pillows on the wall as she's just looking at him in the eyes, and he's looking at her like, "Oh my God, what did you do?" And she just stabs him in the throat, and she like backs up. There's even a moment he like tries to reach for her, and she like backs up like, "Ew, don't touch me," you
Yeah.
know. And he just dies on her bed, bleeding out and stuff. Come to find out, he wakes up and it's just a dream. She didn't like actually kill him, but that's
Yeah.
like one of his nightmares is that she's going to murder him one day. And I guess towards the very, very end of the movie, Detective Atwood, she ends up like having that gunfight. She kills the bad guys and stuff. And then at some point, she gets a phone call and she answers it. And it's basically Mr. Brooks on the other line. And he's like, "Why are you a cop?" And she's like, "Because I like to." And he goes, "But like, you have all the money in the world. Like, why are you a cop? Why do you need to do this?" "It's because you like to, be a cop and everything, huh?" And she's just like, "Yeah, pretty much." And that's when he like confesses, like you said, "I've killed a lot of people in a lot of different ways." And he's talking to her from like a rooftop, and he doesn't admit who he is, but he basically says like, "I'm still alive. I'm still out there, but you're like never gonna find me."
Yeah.
And then he takes
And
that
then
phone and he throws it off the roof
yeah.
of the building.
Well, and she says like at the before the end of the conversation, she's like, "You promised to tell me who you like. You promised to tell me where you are." And then he's like, "Me? I'm at the top of a building." And then he just like takes the cell phone and drops it off the side, and it's just so good, dude. But one thing that I really want to talk about because I thought it was memorable, and it's just to me, is just to back up a little bit when he's in the cemetery with Dane Cook, and he makes it clear, um, or no, before the tables turn, and you realize that he actually wants to live, he's telling Dane Cook how to get away with getting rid of his body. And he says, basically, I want you to just shoot me right now, and I'll fall backwards into this grave. And I guess, like in cemeteries, when somebody is being planned to be buried in a cemetery, their grave is previously dug out like days before, so that when they're buried, it's all ready to go. And so there's already an empty grave, like basically 6 feet dug out in the dirt, right?
Yeah.
So he says, so shoot me and I'll fall backwards into this grave. And then you cover me with just enough dirt to cover me up. And then tomorrow, a casket is going to be lowered on top of my body. And then I'll be gone. Like nobody will ever figure out where I am. I'm gone. There's no possible way that anyone would ever find me. And when he says that in the movie, I have never heard, other than like just like putting a body in like an incinerator and like a morgue or something like that, and burning a body completely to where it's just ash. Have you ever heard of a more brilliant way to make a body disappear? Like, how the hell would anyone ever find him if a casket was lowered on top of him and then buried on top of that? There's no way he would ever be found, ever.
Well, because a lot of like when somebody gets murdered or something and you like bury them in the woods or whatever, when the cops and people start doing a search party for that person, there's obviously a point where they'll come across that patch and they'll be like, whoa, this is like just recently disturbed soil. And like, oh, somebody's probably buried underneath here. But like,
right.
There's already a reason for that disturbed soil in the cemetery because somebody's about to get buried there. Like you said, it's buried it's dug in advance. And the only other brilliant way I can think of to dispose of a body is like if you worked construction and you had an excavator, like it's like that big tractor thing that digs holes, like dig a big hole, bury somebody in it, cover them back up, and then the next day you go to work and then you like cement over it because you're like basically like paving out like a new parking lot or something, or you build like a building on top of it, so that way like nobody would ever suspect anything. Like that's the only other way I can think of like disposing a body besides like acid or incinerator, like you said. Dude, I actually forgot about that part where he says, "Bury me just enough, and then a casket's gonna get lowered on me." That's so brilliant, and that's what I mean, dude. Like this movie is so well thought out.
Yeah,
just everything is so plausible too.
Yep. I can't think of anything wrong with that. Like, like usually when I'm watching a movie, I can judge of what they're saying and like, no, there's something wrong with that. Like you'd get caught that way. But everything he says in this movie, there's not one thing that he says where I'm like, that's not realistic. You would get caught if you did that. Everything he does and says in this movie is realistic, like a real genius that's a murderer would really think of, and it's just like so impressive. And I just have to give a round of applause to the writer and the director, I guess, of this movie who did both. That's awesome. This guy has some real talent, and I really wish that he would do more than just this. But
yeah, Bruce Evans.
Yeah.
So like one thing I wanted to like kind of wrap this up with is you said you give it like an 8. Is that really only because of the Detective Atwood stuff?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you feel like throughout talking that you could possibly give it like a 9? Or is that like I just hate the Atwood stuff so much that I can't give it a 9?
I can't give it a 9 because there's too much of the Atwood stuff in the movie. There's just too much of it, man. Like there's parts of other TV shows and movies that I love so much, and then it shows like a small little part of like a detective trying to like find them, but it's so minor to where it doesn't really bother me because it doesn't take away time from the real characters and storyline that I care about. But in this movie, it does. It devotes way too much time to her storyline, and I just don't care about her storyline or her character, and so I have to knock it down for that,
Yeah, I absolutely understand. And like I was just wondering if you could bump it up after discussing it because like dude, your points and my points together just like make this movie like cement this movie into a solid high score. And I'm so glad that you weren't like, dude, this movie's amazing, but like I'll give it like a 6.5. Like I'd be like, no.
I think if we were to combine scores after everything we've talked about everything that I truly feel about this movie and everything you feel, I think that a good compromise score between the two of us, um, which I think would be kind of a fun thing for you to do. Maybe you could try to like come up with like a compromise score with your guests, you know. And I think a good one for the two of us would be an 8.5.
Yeah, definitely
Good
between
compromise score.
between
Yeah.
8 and a 9, 8.5.
Yeah.
That's good. Actually, there's this one podcast I listen to called Chat at the Movies or something. And basically what they do is they have a score out of 5, and there's 3 of them every episode. And so they all give their score and then they divide it by 3. And that's like the official score for this movie. So if it's like one gives it a 5, one gives it like a 0, one gives it like a 3, they'll take all those scores, add it up, would be an 8, and then they divide it by 3, which would be like a 4 or something, or like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then they'll be
Like
like,
a
okay,
like
this,
a GPA.
yeah, like basically like this movie got this, and then they'll like rank it. And they're like, so this movie fits, it's better than this movie, but not as good as this movie. And like, it's pretty interesting how they do that.
Yeah.
But there's one thing like that I wanted to bring up that I was so excited to bring up earlier when we decided to do this movie. So there's this band called Asking Alexandria. They're a metal band. Like, well, they used to be a metal band. Now they're like more rock and roll, but they used to be like hardcore screaming and stuff like that, which I know you're not a fan of, and a lot of people can't even stomach that kind of music, and I get it. But there's a song that they wrote on their very first album called "Hey There, Mr. Brooks," and it's all about this movie. And I love a creative song lyrically, and so I wanted to read the lyrics of this song. And basically, it from the beginning of the song to the end of it, it's kind of like chronological order of the movie itself. So I wanted to read that for you. So let's check this
Yeah.
out. All right. So band is Asking Alexandria. The song is called "Hey There, Mr. Brooks." These are the lyrics. Oh, you're back to me, and the hunger returns. I told myself I was done for good. All the memories of all the pictures burned. I see them dancing. My heart begins to pound. I didn't make a sound. They didn't see me coming. The lights were left on, the curtains left wide. One scream, it's over. I lay them side by side, holding each other. I'll be there in the morning with a smile on my face. I'll be there in the morning to start it all again. Boy, you caught me red-handed. You've got no fucking clue what you just got yourself into. Panic runs down your leg seeing me kill again. You just got yourself caught and you don't even know it. On the drive, you get the rush and pull a gun on me. We make the stop. It's time to be set free. Oh, the bullet's gone. I take this spade. I slit your throat. You fall into your grave. I cover up my tracks. I'm done. I won't kill again. I said that's it. I'm done. And then it says the chorus one more time. I'll be there in the morning with a smile on my face. I'll be there in the morning to start it all again. And then it ends with saying, no, she's daddy's little girl. She wasn't meant to be another me, but it's the scissors to my throat, to my fucking throat.
Damn.
Bro, I know you don't like how it sounds, that song, because it's all screaming and metal, but like, are those lyrics not like some of the tightest lyrics you've ever heard?
Yeah, dude, it's pretty awesome. And honestly, because of the lyrics and I know what the song is about, um, I think it's awesome. But it's just I'm just not a metal fan, and if you're not a metal fan, it's very difficult to like tolerate metal. You know, just like it is for somebody that hates like classical or something like that. You know what I mean? If you're just not a fan, it's very difficult for you to like it. But I think it's really cool that that band did something for this movie, and it just obviously shows that the band must have like went to go see it all together or something, like in theaters or something. Who knows the story behind it? But the way that I envision it is like when the movie came out, they went to go see it together in the theaters, like the whole band, and they were like maybe out of town on tour or something like that. And then when the movie was over, they were like, that was the tightest movie ever. We got to write a song about this movie. And they were just like, yeah, you know?
Oh, absolutely, dude. Yeah, like, dude, I watched this movie back in I think like 2008 or 2009, so like 2 years after it was out. I was actually living in Nevada still. One of my friends was like, "Have you seen this movie?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Let's watch it." And I was like, still like trying to like become friends with this guy. And so I was like, yeah, dude, whatever you want, dude, you know. But inside I was like, I don't want to watch this movie. I don't know what it's about. I've never heard of it. And then we watched it, and dude, like the whole time my eyes were just like glued to the movie. And when it was done, I was like, that movie was effing epic, dude. I loved
Yeah.
it. And ever since then, like dude, my little sister spent the night a few months ago, and whenever she spends the night, I show her a new horror movie that she hasn't seen because she's only 15, so she's
Yeah.
still like is fresh, dude. She doesn't know like all these movies, and I was like, I was reading all my Blu-rays off, and I was like, "Have you seen this one? Have you seen this one?" And I was like, "Dude, have you seen Mr. Brooks?" And she was like, "No, what's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, that, my dear, is what we're watching tonight." And I basically said, I was like it's about a murderer who like puts it in the past, but then he like kills somebody, but he gets caught killing somebody. And so instead of like that guy blackmailing him, he basically says like, I want you to take me with you to kill somebody. And she's like, that sounds awesome. And I was like, yeah. And we put it on, dude. And she was like, that movie was like, she was like speechless. She was like, that was great. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, dude. Like I said, I've never met one person that hasn't just adored this movie. That's why I don't understand the Rotten Tomato score of 55%.
Yeah. That's weird, dude. I
So weird.
I have not talked with anybody really about this movie ever before except for you. But I really don't see how people could dislike it, except for the storyline that I really dislike. Maybe that's what knocked the score down. Maybe if that storyline didn't exist, this movie would have a higher score. I don't know.
It's very, very possible. But yeah, dude, I don't really think I have anything else left to say about this one. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, just, you know, even though the movie has been spoiled for you, you guys listening, still go watch it because we did not do it justice at all. Go watch it. It's a really good movie.
Oh, it absolutely is. And so I guess thank you guys for listening. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel for some reason, like please subscribe. Really, really, if you made it to the very end, I want you to like go down below and like seriously comment because I would love to hear what you guys thought. First of all, of our coverage of this movie, but also what you thought of this movie itself too. I'd love to hear about that. So being scared, dude, thank you for being on here as always.
Thank you.
We're gonna be doing a lot of movies together, so just get ready for it. It's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready.
Cool, man. I can't wait. All right, dude. Well, I'm going to stop this recording here and I will talk to you and everybody else later.
Later.